Well, for more on this apparent love-hate relationship, Pepe Escobar joins us now live. Hi there, Pepe. Nice to see you. So
nice to see you.
The U.S. At odds with China on several issues ranging from trade to human rights. How can we expect President Obama to react to the leader's visit?
No, for the moment, it's a get-together thing. Don't forget, this visit was heavily scripted by the Chinese. It's the first major visit of a leader in waiting. He'll become the head of the Communist Party next October and president in March 2013. So if we have an Obama too, and if we have, assuming there's not a train wreck, a Mitt Romney, they will have to deal with Xi starting from next year. But it's not only Xi, it's the 9 members of the Standing Politburo. These are the people who decide policy in China. So Xi is one among them. It is a collective leadership. The difference between Xi and Hu Jintao is like a Madame Tussauds model. Xi is more extrovert. He's a dialogue guy. We can say, based on very good reports from people at the highest levels in Beijing, that Xi is really a dialogue guy and would be very good to maintain very close communication with the U.S. because the possibility of really, really bad things happening are enormous, especially after Obama announced this pivot at the Pentagon, by the way, the pivoting from the Middle East to Asia. This means more U.S. interference in the South China Sea, militarization starting in Northern Australia, but maybe in contacts with the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand, especially very close allies of the U.S. here in Southeast Asia. So the Chinese, they look at this and they see encirclement. They don't want to be lectured about the yuan, for instance. They have a mechanism inside the Bank of China which is organizing a slow devaluation of the yuan for the next few years until 2015, 2016. But it's their own pace. They won't be lectured. They won't be lectured on human rights, another thing. It's okay, you can talk to them about why don't you try to deal, especially with your ethnic minorities, in a more civilized way. Like, look what's happening in Tibet at the moment. They closed down Tibet these past few days to foreigners because there are a lot of monks setting themselves on fire in Tibet nowadays.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I understand that, there's a lot of controversial issues like that. I don't think that there's going to be a chance for these two leaders to touch upon issues such as the one that you just mentioned. How successful do you think this meeting will be in easing any tension between the two nations?
Look, in fact, it was a very interesting Valentine's Day meeting, wasn't it, between Obama and the future leader of China. But Obama, he was basically lecturing Xi in their first get-together about, once again, devaluation of the yuan, human rights, and even Syria. Why did you vote against us? We want a regime change in Syria, and you voted against us at UN Security Council. So, it starts already with friction. And inside the White House, so the Chinese, they take, their stickers for protocol and mutual respect. And in fact, I was just reading the China Daily's headlines for the past 5 minutes or so. One of them is very, very important. It says that both parties need strategic mutual trust. And that's the problem, because Beijing, when they look at all this lecturing coming from the U.S., there is no mutual trust. What they, like I said before, they see a progressive policy of encirclement. So it's very complicated, and especially now with these battles in the UN Security Council regarding basic what's going on in the Middle East and in Southwest Asia, Syria and Iran, and soon there are going to be more debates about Northern Africa and again the rest of the Middle East. So there is a polarization between the U.S. and NATO on one side, inside the Security Council, and the two major BRICS countries, Russia and China, on the other side. So this is going to be really, really heavy within the next few years. There's no question about it.
And Pedro, I know that you are Pepe. Sorry, I know that you are in Southeast Asia as we speak right now, and you are an Asia Times correspondent. Curious to see how they are covering this story over there.
Well, look, Thailand is very, very close with China as well. They are very close. They have a very close U.S. ally in Southeast Asia, of course. But don't forget that the ruling elite here in Thailand is Sino-Thai, basically. This doesn't mean there is a fifth column here in Thailand or in Indonesia or in the Philippines or in Malaysia, for that matter, Chinese. No, but this means that Asia, Southeast Asia especially, is very closely integrated with China. And there are problems, for instance, the South China Sea, problems between China and Philippines, China and Vietnam. They will sit down and discuss it at their own East Asian table, let's put it this way. So interference from the West is a very, very tricky matter. And if the Pentagon wants to militarize the relationship, the pivoting is going to be more on a military level. This is going to be really, really tricky with the new Beijing leadership, even with Xi, which is a more, amenable guy compared to Hu Jintao, but it's going to be hard.
And as you just mentioned, the worry that the U.S. seems to have is that there is this China's growing influence in that region, and that is why the U.S. is shifting the military strategy away from the Middle East to China. And with this new military vision, I mean, how do we expect China to react to this?
Look, it's still. Let's backtrack a little bit. I think it's important to remember that everything that we are watching now started with another visit to the U.S. by who? Deng Xiaoping himself in 1979. He started the ball rolling. America fell in love with Deng in 1979. And when he came back to China, he unleashed all these reforms, and we're seeing the fruits of these reforms nowadays. Second largest economic power in the world, and now a strategic competitor of the U.S. in so many areas. And even we have, like Obama, when he goes around the U.S. talking to military, he talks about how good the airports over there, how good are the railroads over there, and everything, as we know, the infrastructure in the U.S. is crumbling.
And that's exactly it, Pepe. As we saw in this story that we just played, it is election year, and we see a lot of this anti-China rhetoric, but it does get confusing because we see candidates from Michelle Bachmann to Newt Gingrich touting some of the aspects of China that make it more desirable for development and to do business there. Why is there this contradiction?
Look, when Rick Santorum says that we need to go to war with China, this is so pathetic. In fact, American multinationals, they want to be in China forever. Can you imagine if Apple was assembling iPads in the US? They would cost like $1,500, $2,000. They wouldn't cost $499 or $599. They can do that because they delocalize to China. And most American multinationals who delocalize to China and other parts of Asia, they want to be here forever. So, this is basically for internal consumptions to isolationist people inside the U.S. It's not the majority of Americans, by the way. The problem is there is a mutual trust problem. When you see the polls, 52% of Americans have a negative impression of China. Why? Because China could improve their PR relations and say, look, our economies are interdependent. It can be a win-win situation. In the views of, the Bachmann-Santorum crowd, it's a win-lose situation. Win for the U.S., lose for China. It's not going to happen.
Pepe, great to have you on the show as always. That was Pepe Escobar, correspondent for Asian Times.